Hello and welcome to TheAIbumMan. Today we're going to be tackling the new Metallica album because how could I resist talking about this? This of course is Hardwired to Self-Destruct, coming 8 years after Death Magnetic and 5 years after the Lou Reed collaborated masterpiece, Lulu. No, not really. We finally have in our midst, after God so much waiting, a brand spanking new Metallica album. An album that was promised to be a return to thrash, but without Rick Rubin on production and his signature brick-walling of sound and terrible, terrible mixes. I mean, well, with the exception of Junior Dad, Lulu made William Burroughs' Naked Lunch seem coherent in comparison. Death Magnetic actually had quite a lot to like, but also to dislike. I mean, The Day That Never Comes and All Nightmare Long are songs I'd honestly put up there with Metallica's best, sprawling melodic Metallica epics. But the album's main problem was that it dragged on, and on, relentlessly. So along comes a double album from the Bay Area thrashers. A double album. That phrase rang so many alarm bells in my mind. Sure, Iron Maiden managed to pull it off in 2015 with their surprisingly incredible Book of Souls that seemed to breathe new life and energy into the band. But does this album blow up in Metallica's faces, or is this riding the lightning we all dreamed they could? My track review of their opening track and first single, Hardwired, was hardly the most positively received review of my life, all because I found it to honestly be a rather tepid affair. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't really particularly good. It was just rather meh. I found the direction sonically to be rather promising. This was the most thrash we had heard the band since probably the Black Album, and that was something which did indeed get me excited. So let's start where this album goes right, where it hits the nail on the head, satiating my melodic thrash cravings. Atlas Rise, with its chorus taking me back to Master of Puppets, has everything I look for in a modern-day Metallica song. A fast-paced, frantic, driving riff, guitar lead interplays between Kirk and James, and a solo that moves from wah-wah pedal noodling to bringing in James and achieving a more definable, stronger lead melody. And James's rugged old sailor's voice brings a great combination of grit and melody to the vocal and lyrical department. And then you get something like the kineticism present in Moth into Flame, the trashy chugging riffs built into a catchy chorus full of melody, both vocally and guitar-wise, which reminds me of some of the best moments from Death Magnetic. I mean, all these songs are rather long, they're all about 6 minutes odd, just like Moth into the Flame is, but this had the focus to it. And when I hear the last third, in particular, of Halo on Fire, the album has me utterly transfixed, taken back to the good old days of Metallica, of vibrant, memorable songs that you can headbang along to and scream the choruses of. That's all I wanted at heart from a new Metallica album. And you have to look no further than the final track on the album, Spit Out the Bone, to find the epitome of that. Perhaps the best track on the album, a furious, up-tempo beast of a song, ravaging through 7 minutes of dense, tight riffage. How even Lars's drumming has a precision and aptitude that we have not seen for God knows how long. The heaviest, noisiest track on the record, and how Robert Trujillo even has a little bass solo on it, which is always a bit of a fun, a throwback to when Cliff Burton used to have some bass solos. We certainly haven't seen a bass solo in Metallica from a long time. They would never have done that under Newsted, that's for sure. And yeah, I mean, the instrumental section in the second half in particular is just bliss. The song builds to all the right places, to impactful choruses brimming with life and energy, going from thrash to groove metal, interchanging back and forth, morphing. It's wonderful. But now's the part where I'm going to get all of those lovely angry comments I so do enjoy, because this description that has been very, very, very positive so far cannot apply to the whole album, if only it did. Overall, my thoughts are not half as positive. I find this a limp, turgid affair overall. And I'm going to explain why. So start with a little nitpick before getting onto the big stuff. Lars's drums sound like shit. I mean, this, of course, in many ways, actually, it's almost a wonderful thing. Because somehow Lars honestly is a pioneer when it comes to having shit drum sounds. Because this drum sound, it sounds shit in a different way to Death Magnetic, whose drums also sounded shit in a different way to Saint Anger. And I'm not talking about the playing, which is actually of a high enough standard on the album. It is, it's serviceable. It's the production. The snare has this harsh, piercing tone, and not half as harsh as Death Magnetic's ear-bleeding one. And the bass drum sounds so weak, like he's just hitting a little piece of plastic. Honestly, Lars seems to be the man of 1,000 bad drum sounds. I just don't even quite understand at this point. Another small nitpick is with James's voice. While overall, I find that in many ways it does excel, and generally is passable, at times it does sound a bit too pristine and clear. After taking vocal lessons and things, you see in the early 2000s, I do find that sometimes James's voice lacks a bit of the grit of the older material, and is sometimes not as fitting to the more old school 80s thrash sound that they're clearly trying to go for on the record. The biggest weakness by far, though, is the self-indulgent track list, which is way too long. This album is more stretched out than a Peter Jackson film. At 77 minutes may not sound that long, but when you're hearing the same mid-tempo groove metal wannabe riffs over and over again with little to anything distinguishing each track, blending into one dull entity. This is most prevalent on disc 2, which is easily the weakest part of the record. Songs like Am I Savage and the awful MANUNKIND, whose name really does speak volumes about the quality of the track, just listlessly carry on, stuck in the mid-tempo swamp of dull riffs, lacking the guitar interplay of Kirk and James, and instead just relying on boredom to slay you. Look, I love Doom and Sabbath, and Metallica seem to try a bit of that here, but they aren't Saint Vitus, and these almost Doom thrash crossbeats with a bit of Pantera riffs thrown in there end up being jacks of no trades, and certainly masters of none. With also the lyrics not exactly helping, they are kind of the outpourings of an edgy 15-year-old, which I can forgive if the chorus is lifted above the songs and rose out of the mire, but instead they just linger within it. I mean, one of the big questions of this album is just Kirk Hammett, why? Why did you lose all of your riffs? Kirk has no writing credits on this album, because he decided it was a great idea to keep thousands of riffs on his phone and not back them up. And of course, sod's law, he lost his phone. And honestly, this shows on the album, and I think it's one of the biggest weaknesses, is the lack of Kirk input. He was demoted to sideman, not because of any tensions within the band, but because of his own ineptitude. Kirk usually brings, in my opinion, an interesting dynamic in the riffs. He brings out the memorable riffs and counteracts James's default down-picked chugfest. Here, as a supporting role, yes, he provides a nice harmony part or two, or a fun little solo break to break things up a bit, but to me it doesn't give the album enough dynamic range. When we're looking at albums like And Justice for All, Master of Puppets, Rad the Lightning, it's the dynamic range, it's the difference in the songs that always stands out to me. Every song is so uniquely identifiable, even on the first listen. There's no way you're going to mix up Battery and Master of Puppets or Disposable Heroes. It's just not going to happen. Look, is this a bad record? No. No, it's not. And you may say I've been on one half of this, I was glowingly positive about aspects, and the other half, I was, well, rather severely harsh. And the reason is that kind of balances out to being a rather mediocre record. Look, when you have a back catalogue as stunning as Metallica, you're going to have higher expectations for a record. That's inevitable. But even if this was from a brand new thrash band, I still wouldn't be all that impressed. It's just not an album that honestly connects to me. It's not one that really impresses me and fills me with the awe that Metallica bring. I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. I mean, it is not a bad record. It is perfectly listenable. It just drags on a bit. It could have been cut down into a far more concise, snappier, and really great record. There's a potential maybe 8 out of 10 record in here, but in the thrash climate of 2016 and how especially with Vector slaying so hard with Terminal Redux, I find this hard to recommend as essential thrash listening. And just to aggravate people further, I thought Megadeth's Dystopia was quite a lot better than this. I really enjoyed that record. Hate me if you will. This has been the Album Man. Thanks for watching, comment, subscribe, and as usual, long live rock and roll.